Cool. Well, what I'm giving a talk on today is inspired by a professor here when I was kind of talking to him about what we thought students might like to hear about, and his suggestion was working freelance. That's a thing we don't cover that much at William & Mary. So just for me to get like a little bit of the scope of the crowd, I'm wondering who's a student and who isn't? Maybe can do by show of hands if you're a student. And what if you're a student studying film? Can we do a show of hands? Okay, and then regardless of whether or not you're a student, are you interested in working in film in a freelance capacity? Raise your hands. Okay, anyone interested in, well, fine, that's great, I could go forever. So what we're gonna cover in this talk here, there's like so many different things you could throw in. So the way I decided to do it was that we're gonna, I'll do a little bit more of an intro on me. We're gonna talk about getting a job, having a job, and not having a job. And that's kind of the overflow of this, or the overview of this. And I'll do questions at the end. If you have a burning question, just raise your hand. How about? And we'll do it like that. I don't need to forget. So, cool. Okay, so about half folks at work or are studying film. So I'm a cinematographer. I use that term the exact same as director of photography. And again, like, you're a varied group of people, so I'm gonna err on the side of explaining things a little bit extra, and sorry if you've heard it before. And then of course, I'm only one person, right? So everything I'm saying with the confidence and life experience of having done it the last 20 years, but there could be very different ways that other people do it and other experiences people have. And of course, you know, as I've heard other people say at these kinds of talks, unfortunately there's no like, do X, Y, and Z, and you could have a career in the movie business as a director, right? Unlike many other fields, there's not really a clear trajectory, / there's a lot of different ways you can come at this work / art. So, a director of photography on a narrative feature film is in charge of the lighting department, and it's in charge of the camera department. They work with the director to come up with the shots. They're in charge of the lighting, and they also have a lot of like social, political work they have to do. They work on the budget with the producer, they work on the schedule with the AD. That's kind of the scope of that job on a narrative film set. On a documentary, it might just be me as the DP. Right now we have a crew of one filming, or they're doing all of the jobs in sound and video or whatever. So like there's quite a range that this job entails, to sometimes being the person in charge of only video and it's only you, and maybe it's only video and a lot of people, or maybe it's only you and it's video, but it's also all the production and direction and sound and everything else that goes into making a video. I don't have too much to expand on my experience. I want to like just set a tone that I've been doing this a lot, you know. I've been to a number of film festivals. I've gotten to travel for work a lot. When someone asks me what I do, I usually answer that I do about half documentary work. Hello, it's okay, come on in. And about half narrative work. But then I also do about a third of like anything else, of event videography, of branded content, of a commercial, of a music video, you know, there's quite a range. All right, this will be the last little bit about me. My personal trajectory is I went to William & Mary. I wanted to major in English. I took a film seminar course and really liked it and decided to double major in film. And I forget what it's like to be a student. I guess one way you can do it is be like, I like this, I will do more of it. And then another way could be much more thoughtful and be like, do I want a freelance career? What if I ever want to buy a house? How do I feel about insecurity and hustle? Those are a lot of things that really go into this field that you might not think about ahead. And of course, there's like such a broad range of things you can do in the entertainment industry, right? You could have a full-time job making videos for Verizon. You could also be like, you know, trying to make the next indie movie and staying free. And so like there's staying available for that. So there's like quite a range of ways to get into this industry. So I went to William & Mary. Afterwards, I moved back to my parents for like the summer and I started applying to jobs in New York City. I got hired as part of a documentary co-op. I thought that was so cool. They said they did 5% weddings and documentaries, and I moved to New York City and we did 100% weddings. But that's how I financed, that's how I lived the first, maybe like year or two while I was trying to work in the indie film business where I knew nobody. And I guess I just kept doing that in the indie film business. I started working in the camera department a little bit. I was a second AC, first AC operator. I also started working a little bit as an AD. An AD is, well, as a second AD. The AD is the person who really runs the set. Like, if you're the director, you don't always say action. Someone else is really like being the big loud boss, so you can be the quiet creative boss. So I did a little bit of camera department, a little bit of AD, and I started shooting student films at all of the New York film schools because I hadn't created that much work down here. So that was how I built a reel. And that's kind of my whole career. Then I kind of have just been doing that at like higher levels, ideally with better projects, not always, since then. Yeah, I think a lot of, well, I'll come back to that. I've also written a little bit for film magazines. I think a lot of this career, and probably a lot of life and a lot of careers, is kind of making your own luck, And I've written for American Cinematographer and the International Cinematographer Guild, the two best cinematography magazines, I think, in the world, at least in the US. And I just sent them an email and asked if I could write for them, And in fact, I really messed it up. I sent the first guy an email saying I'd love to write for this magazine, and he said, "This is embarrassing for you, you're writing the wrong guy, you want this guy's contact." And I said, "Thank you so much, I'm so embarrassed. I would also love to write for you, sir." And I ended up writing for both of them. So a lot of it is just like try, Like no one wants to give you work. No one, if you're trying to be a director, which is what I assume most students in film school want to be, like no one else cares about that except you. There are not people waiting out there to give you director work if you don't have the experience being a director, right? So you definitely have to like push yourself and self-advocate. And I'm jumping around a little, but I really want to stress that like making some work in college is probably one of the easiest times you'll ever be able to make a film, right? So I'm not up to date on exactly the course curriculum at William & Mary, but I think still, and at least when I was here, it's much more focused on visual theory and history than hands-on. And I think that's great. And if you want to get a job shooting a commercial, you can't just say, "I would like to shoot a commercial as a director, please." They want to see examples of your work. So while you're in college, even if it is not part of a course, I would heavily encourage you to make something with your friends in a really sincere way. Like the amount of access you have to free labor of your friends. I know there's free gear. You're also in this warm, welcoming environment. You can probably get free locations. Like if you can come out of school, and again, I don't know where we all are, maybe we're all out of school, sorry, but with like 2 or 3 pieces you're proud of, that's way farther along than just like having a desire to direct. Right? And you might learn that you don't like it, and you'll certainly make a bunch of mistakes, but now you're making them on this project and not on like, the first thing you get. So yeah, I mean, I do really think you have to make your own luck, and like, you have to draw out the opportunities, Hello, welcome. All right, so. Yeah, so this is in the getting a job section. At least for camera people, we would talk a lot about union versus non-union, and I think like a bigger picture thing to think about is whatever freelance job you're looking to do, like what's the point of doing it, right? Like if you really want to be, let's say, a film director, can we do a show of hands? How many people want to be a film director? So I don't focus it too much on that. Okay, and how many people want to work in the film industry in some capacity? Yeah, okay. So like, I'm sorry if I've dumbed it down too much, but if you did want to be a film director, right, and you also have to eat, you can make your living by being a DP or by being a PA, but if you don't care about those things, there's no real need to make your living in this industry, right? Like if you have a film you really want to make, you could become a banker and make some money and then make it, as opposed to trying to work your way up. So that's all I'm saying. That like, I feel like I have a lot of friends who went the union path, right? And for cinematography, for example, you can start as a loader and then be a first assistant camera and then be a second assistant camera and then be a camera operator and then be a cinematographer. And you're working in the industry and you're surely learning a lot because there's people around, but I don't think those other jobs relate very much to each other at all until you get to like camera operator and DP. So you're in the world, but you're not really doing that skill set. So like a different approach could certainly be shooting a bunch of student films as a cinematographer, and you're starting at a really low budget, maybe you're not getting paid, but you're doing the actual craft, right? So in a similar way, like there's a lot to think about with the film industry and whether, or if you're doing it for a primarily one reason or a creative reason, do you want your income to be coming from that same industry but in a different way or from a different industry or whatever it is. Because those are two pretty big approaches, different approaches. One thing I'm not going to do at all in this is talk about AI, mostly because I don't use it or understand it, but I also don't know how it's going to affect all these different, obviously it's having a huge effect already on film. But in terms of getting a job or having a job, I'm not so sure. Yeah, I would really stress, try to leave college with work. Like, if you think it's hard now, it's probably much easier just because there's such access. And so much of it is luck, right? But also like life, so much of it is putting yourself in a position to be lucky. So the first, maybe the second film I worked on as a PA in New York City, total, PA is production assistant. It's just, you know, the bottom general helper. They're not creatively involved at all. But that film won Sundance that year. Like my first movie I worked on, nothing to do with me, but you know, like it's, I don't know, I like hustled really hard to try to be a PA on this movie. And I remember, I don't know if this anecdote is that worth it, but like I only had one day of on-set before I left William and Mary. Someone came and shot a little interview somewhere around here, and I was like the free intern for the day. And I asked them to write me a letter of recommendation, and they did. And like my real first indie job in New York on a feature, I think with my little letter of recommendation, I got an interview to be a PA. At the interview, they interviewed me to be the key PA, which is the boss PA, which means I must have the most experience out of the group of PAs that they're interviewing. It's a very, very small movie. I got a call back and they asked if they could hire me as a production coordinator. This is like, they're just not paying people enough, so that's why we're doing such a low thing. On the first day of set, we realized that the person they'd hired to be the second AD, who basically plans the movie ahead, was like a little nuts. And so as a coordinator, I had to find a new second AD. And I'm like catching up to learning what all these terms mean. And to the bosses, I was like, hey, can I just find you a different coordinator and can I be the second AD? And they were like, okay. They were just, you know, overwhelmed. And so anyway, so that's the story. That's how I ended up in like the second AD position on my first feature. And the second AD plans the movie, so like you really can't have a newbie. So in practice, me and the first AD kind of switched, and I ran the set, and they planned the movie. And I don't know, I thought that was interesting to include because like no one has any idea what's going on. Like they're just kind of like, okay, let's try to figure it out. I don't know, that was a long way to say like, you can craft your own, you can make your luck, right? And like, Table Rock Productions wrote me a letter of recommendation 20 years ago, and here I am. All right, so here's my other thoughts on getting a job. Just as, you know, oh, they don't want to hire you, as in they're not looking to hire you, I'm also shocked at how many people don't make it easy to be hired. So I'm on a text chain of like 20 mostly female cinematographers. Hello, welcome. And every now and then, it slowed down after COVID, but someone would post a job. And I was like squarely in the middle, which is a great place to be experience-wise on this kind of group. I would really recommend starting groups like this. But people used to post, oh, hey, there's this job that I can't do. Does anyone want it? If so, please send whatever, your resume, your portfolio, your name, and your email to me in a separate text. And I would just do it to the letter. And I got 50% of those jobs because so many people would be like, I'd like to do that, and then move on. And so now you're making that person has to track you down and ask for those things that they've already asked for. Just like make it as simple as possible. Like include your phone number at the end of your email. Include your IMDb link or whatever it is. Like try, you know, they're probably someone who is working whose job is to hire someone right now, regardless of, you know, even if it's their project. Like make it easier for them to do that. All right, so these are just some general, any questions at this point? Any burning thoughts to share? Suggestions? All right.
Oh, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Why New York City? Why did you choose that place?
Well, so it's 20 years ago, and I guess still, but it seemed like LA and New York were the two main places. Can I throw a cube at you? Is that what's happening? All right. The question is, why did you choose?
I just thought you might use the mic, so.
Yeah. Why did you choose New York City? Because I thought I'd like it more than LA, and because that's where a lot of indie film was. Yeah. And I mostly get hired out of there. I do a lot of work not there, but a lot of it stems from initial conversations from people I meet there. All right, so here are some other general thoughts on getting a job, and then we'll switch to having a job. And you know most of these, but you know, I don't really know what you know. So hustle's really involved in freelance, right? Like the joy of it is you don't have to work all the time, but a reality is that you spend a lot of your time focused on your work stuff without getting paid to do it, you know? So I guess I still think of my time as like time that I'm on set working, time that I am free, like I am traveling, I'm not thinking about the job, or time basically that you're doing unpaid labor towards your job, right? We could count this. We could count making phone calls. We could count going to film festivals. We could count going to screenings. So there's like a lot of your time when you're freelance goes into creating work and establishing relationships. So you should like it in doing that, or be okay with having that kind of unknown in your life, right? I think I'm jumping back. Yeah, okay. So the way I suggest to get work is hustling a lot. Is usually most of my work comes from recommendations and word of mouth. It really was great having this affinity group of about 20 cinematographers, most of who are female, for sharing work, for getting support, for getting advice, for sharing fellowships. And I think one of the best things I could do for my career, that I'm not actively doing, but I would recommend this kind of thing, is start a couple other affinity groups, right? I could be like ADD filmmakers or Burning Man cinematographers or whatever it is, just a couple little things where you have like an invested interest and you care about each other a little bit. So you're more likely to like share things, and when someone's like, I cannot figure out how to turn this camera on, there's 20 people that are on the other side of that text that are like, you forgot to close the door, or like someone's thought of it. I also totally think you should focus on repeat clients, right? So often a lot of us are reaching out to new people, and the people you don't have to prove yourself to is the people you have already worked with. Such a big part of this industry, I think, is simply being remembered. Like if I was crewing up a film right now, I'm probably going to think of the people I worked with on my last 2 projects, all of whom were good, but are by no means the best of my 20-year career, right? But it's just because I'm thinking of them. So keeping yourself in other people's mind, is it sending a polite email every couple months? Maybe you have a newsletter. We all have whatever relationship we have with social media, but it used to be pretty clear that if I posted a picture of me in a camera, about half the time I got a job offer. And I think it's just people remember you exist, and they're like, oh yeah, she can do this. So whatever it is to like stay in touch. The things that have impressed me the most by far was a woman gaffer I worked with who would just send a polite follow-up email that was so complimentary. And like, I know she's looking for work, but it was like, oh, I really loved working with you, blah, blah, some compliment. I'd love to do it again, keep me in mind. It's so short, it's not demanding a reply, and it like makes me think of her in a positive way the next time I have something come up. Sorry. When I first started, I got a lot of work off websites. I've kind of priced out of that, but I believe it was Craigslist. There was something called Production Hub that it might now exist as Staff Me Up. You know, I'm sure there's always a bunch of new ones. There's always a couple new social media groups for filmmakers popping up. I don't use them, but Portrait was one recently. I don't know if that one closed. I don't use this, but I've heard that there's places to pitch, like if you're more of like an all-in-one kind of production company. Again, you have to do your own research on this because I don't know about it, but I think sometimes there's like clients that are like, oh, we'd like a video made on this. Can you send, and then you take it from there. You're like, okay, in 2 weeks I can do this for this amount of money. I don't know, I haven't used that. I think a big thing is network, and that's obvious, and there's tons of articles you can read about networking. But follow through is a really big part, right? I've gone to so many film festivals and I'm like, oh, fun party, and you meet all these people and you talk to all these people, and my friends that are better at it take the next week, don't book any work, and write all those people that they met on like how they would like to follow up, what they want to do in a meaningful way. So I think part of that is kind of like knowing yourself, like what are you looking to get out of whatever? If it's a more formal networking thing, it's much more easier to be like, hey, how's it going? Tell me a little bit about you, and then move on because you are all there to network, right? As opposed to if it's a more broad, softer thing, then there's got to be a little more nuance to it. But I've certainly gotten jobs from like going to affinity group events, New York Women in Film and Television. Someone called me for a job after that. So yeah, I think it's worth like pausing and thinking how you interact, and maybe the timing of it, right? Like if we exchange phone numbers right now and then we move on, maybe neither of us remembers that again. But if you're going to follow up in 2 days when someone's not still doing the whole whatever excitement of the festival, maybe you're more likely to get a different response. What else? I guess also in getting a job, particularly for a cinematographer, sometimes they'd like you to own a camera. That's new in the last like 15-ish years as cameras have come way down. I'm not going to talk too much about that, but it's something you can think about. I certainly have like friends who took out big loans and bought really nice cameras when they were younger and are doing much better than me because they have much more experience. They've brought that gear on a job at a low rate, and probably that helped them get more work and then get more experience, and that has been wonderful for their career. I also think we're at a time where cameras change so fast, and it used to be you could invest in lighting, but lighting changes so fast. So, you know, does it make sense to gamble some money on a more expensive camera? I don't know. I think if you do it, you'll have a little more money coming in. Everyone always wants you to bring the gear for free, though. How much of your time do you want to be a negotiating rental house versus just like do the art you want to make? It's nice to have a camera so you can go make something when you want. Another 1 or 2 things that have worked for me really have just been like following my heart. If you remember the Standing Rock demonstrations, these indigenous-led demonstrations against an oil pipeline in 2016, they were in the national news. Someone brought me for like 5 days to volunteer as a cinematographer. I found it very inspiring. I like bought an RV and went back for 4 months to try to like produce more media and get more attention there. This is not why I did it, but like work from 2 of those projects screened in Sundance that year. So like I think just follow the things you're interested in. That's so broad, but like there's a sincerity to it that I think is real. Any questions at this point? Yeah.
You spoke about gear. What personal gear do you have?
What personal gear do I have? You mean like what do I own that I work with? I own a Canon C300 Mark II, which is a video camera that shoots in 4K. I had owned the Canon C100, which was not 4K, which I thought was very pretty, but then people started asking for 4K, so that is the reason I jumped up. I also own some lighting gear. I own a tiny bit of audio gear, so like I could do an interview that's just me. I'd prefer not to, but if it's a small enough thing. I think that's it. I think I have a DSLR camera I don't use, a GoPro I don't use. And also, like, companies want to give you gear. So I guess it's a privilege to live in New York and there's all these different camera houses. I don't quite know how the same it is here. But, like, if you're making a small project, I would, yeah, just the whole audacity. I think a theme of this talk I would like to be audacity. And you don't have a budget, you could ask a camera rental house if they'll just give it to you anyway, you know, or if they'll give you $3,000 worth of stuff for $500. Sometimes they do. They want to have a positive relationship with you and they want you to come back when you're a bigger deal. And if it doesn't cost them anything, then they might be more likely to do it. You probably still need expensive insurance. That has snuck up on us before. But I don't know, that's one thought. There's lensauthority.com or lensrental.com is a really cheap rental house out of like Michigan or somewhere where it mails you the stuff, but it has a lot of stuff and it's pretty affordable if you ever just want to play around for a weekend or something. What else? Any other questions? All right. Yeah, okay. So having a job. So once you have a job, one thing about being freelance is like it's short, right? You only have a job for a short period of time and then you need another job. So like you're always trying to make a good impression to your bosses, whoever that is, but also to like the PA. You know, most people don't get into film to PA. That's probably a director that has a project they want to make. Just be nice to people because you should anyway. But also because like who knows what can lead to what or whose friend is looking for something. To make the generalization, and some of you are William and Maryers, you're probably smart people. You're probably good thinkers. You're probably good problem solvers. Like, being on set is very much about, here, there's all this chaos and nonsense and some stuff's gonna go wrong and like, how do we fix it? So very much depending on your role, it's nice, it's a person that is a quick thinking or just like thoughtful problem solver is great to have around. Another huge part of this job is knowing when to speak up and when to not. Right? Like if the director is trying to decide something, the PA that wants to be a director, it's not the time to suggest a good idea that they have, you know? So that's, you feel that kind of things out, but it's like a balance to be like a helpful contributor and like knowing when that contribution is helpful. While having a job and wanting to support the filmmakers and do the best you can, unfortunately, it's often on you to balance that with being like safe and respectful, right? So most film productions follow the union rules even if they're not union. And so we have a baseline, right? And the baseline sucks. The baseline is a 12-hour day. That's a long day if we're doing it multiple days, right? And the baseline is a 10-hour turnaround time often, which means from when you stop work to when you start again, that's 10 hours to travel and go home and sleep. So like, there's a lot of these things that like we're trying to be better, but it really kind of has to be on an individual line and for each other how you hold the line, right? Like the problem with filmmaking is it would always be better if you had more time, you know? And so we need like these controls on us to not run away forever. Like if someone's like, oh, we can't afford overtime. Like we still say that we're paying overtime because the producers need a reason to let us go home at hour 10 or 12, right? There needs to be reasons that cap it. So anyway, there's too many things to get into, but like, especially if you're in a position with anyone below you, try to look out for them too, because it is a tricky industry where it's easy for someone to be like, okay, PA, can you just go take that car and then pick it up at 6? And no one's necessarily, I mean, obviously the producer should be checking, but like speak up for each other, and, you know, and like, let's shift it safely. All right, what else do I want to say about having a job? Oh, okay. A lot of stuff you can fake, right? Like I'm mostly a camera person, so I'm talking about this through the camera person perspective. And at this point, I've used dozens of cameras, right? If someone wants to hire me for a job on a certain camera, and they say, have you used this camera? And I have not used it. I'm not going to lie. But if they say, oh, hey, can you shoot on the Fuji FS6 tomorrow? I can decide that I know how to do that, right? I've used so many cameras. We have the whole internet. We have so many videos. We have the manual online. You could probably go learn it at a rental house. So you kind of have to figure out when to say, no, I can't do that, you know, or when to say, no, but I can figure it out, or when to be like, yeah. And there are certainly times when you should not fake it, but like you can probably do a lot more than you think you can, right? Or you start to learn, like, you start to trust yourself a little bit, and you don't want to ruin the whole thing. But there, if you don't know this camera, you could hire an AC that knows it. You could say, hey, I don't really know it, but I'd love to use it because I know you need that for a budget reason. So like, you know, yes, but. The flip side of that is that someone talking to you confidently does not mean that they know more than you do. This is, I wish that it did, but like the number of times, always a man, is explaining lenses or lights to me, and I want that explanation if they're more informed. But sometimes it takes a while to be like, oh, you know, they're not. So like, this is just a general life statement. This isn't related to freelance or film or whatever, but like we teach people, the flip side of like fake it and act with confidence is someone faking it and acting with confidence. And both of those things are often true. I think especially in this field, my field, it's very male dominated. It's very dominated by people that want to look good at their jobs. We all want to look good at our jobs, but sometimes that's presenting information as fact that's not necessarily fact, right? So much of filmmaking is subjective. Like, does this look better like this or like this? Like, you know, is this camera better than that camera? There's probably 8 reasons why this one's better and 10 reasons why that one's better. So it's, I don't know, it's good to get a lot of information, but then it's also, it's good for me to remember that not everything is an opinion someone is sharing, and sometimes they think it's the truth, and sometimes they think it's their opinion. Any deep thoughts or questions at this juncture? All right, cool, 20 minutes. All right, so I have my last bit of having a job, and then not having a job. So having a job, we've talked a little bit about this. There's such a range in this industry, right? So this is the entertainment industry. It is not the have fun making art at home industry. Sorry, you know? So like, I think a lot of us get into this because we want to tell stories and make art, and that's wonderful and a good reason to do it. And then to raise the money to make a movie, there's also there's the industry element of it. So within that huge spectrum, you can have a filmmaker of one, you can be on a corporate video, you can have an indie set. Oh, going back to geographical locales. So like, there's a lot of different things to think about if you're thinking of moving to a certain area that makes film, right? Like New York or LA. I'm most familiar with New York. I recently worked out in LA. The rates were a little lower. They have more filmmakers, so they have more choice. That was something I wasn't expecting. Some of the safety stuff I wish had been a little bit better, and I think it's the same reason that they have a lot of filmmakers. So, you know, it wasn't terrible, but it was like, all right, we're gonna drive an hour and a half to set, and you're like, why aren't we putting everyone in hotels there, right? If you can't afford it, then maybe we should be cutting a day. Like anyway. When I worked recently in DC, it was really hard to find, the rates were much higher because there's fewer crew there and people are used to whatever the local ecosystem is, right? I don't know DC super well, but I think it's network shows and talk shows paying. So that's a very different number that you're looking at than an indie documentary to a to a corporate video, to a commercial. There's a very wide range of rates involved in this. When I'm hiring people, this is what two things I think about a lot are, do I want that person around? And that hits higher for me than their skill level, especially in AC, they're right next to you all the time, you know? So like, I want someone who's nice, I want someone who's positive, who has a good attitude, I want someone who doesn't like take up too much space when I'm trying to think, you know? Like knowing when to be like, how was your weekend? And when to be like, I'm trying to figure out this. And of course you want someone skilled, but definitely attitude is like, I think a much higher percent than people think.
And I guess also with attitude,
is just how you interact with everyone else on set. And one thing that I guess I'll say, struggled with my whole career is if we're doing like a narrative project, I really want it to be awesome. Like I want it to be the best it can. And probably I would be farther along if I'd been like, 80% is great, and let's be super nice to everyone the whole time, which I do think is important and what I should be. But sometimes I get like swept up in it, and then it's a little frustrating that we can't hit 90 because we're a group of 30 people all trying to make an unwieldy art piece, and it's never gonna quite go right. So like having it be 80% and done, well, it's like two different thoughts. Having it be 80% good and done is better than 90% good and not done. But similarly, having it be like 88% good and we're all still happy is probably the best, right? Like maybe a producer really rushed me, and then now we have these 2 extra hours at the end of the day because of some producer problem that we could have had more delight. Like this is not the attitude to have. The attitude is like, okay, great, we did the best we can today, and tomorrow we'll do it again different. All right, not having a job. Not having a job is one of the best parts, right? I mean, it can be very stressful for people because they're thinking about how to get the next one when you're working freelance. But also, like, I think it is great that I do not work all the time. It is a choice. It is by design that I want to do that. So yeah, enjoy it. I do think trying to separate your time into like actual free time and time I'm going to spend thinking about my next job serves you, because otherwise I would so often spend all my time thinking about the next job, not even in a stressy way, just in a email, this. And suddenly days and days go away and you're kind of doing this, it's not producing anything and you're not paid for it and you're not relaxing. So money. So like money is a big deal, and really even before COVID and strikes and AI and all these very drastic changes to my industry, I would always tell people you really want to try to have a pile of money in the bank. It's very important because you might not work. Like so often my friends would be like, it's so busy right now. Or they'd be like, oh, there's no work right now. And that would not correspond to my life. I either would have a lot of work when they didn't, or vice versa. Like it's such a chance game. If you have my 3 clients that hire me, but your business closes and your brother starts working, so you're gonna have to hire him. Like it's so easy. There's only a few people that like it's very easy for your job to go away. So I would suggest somehow having some money. Maybe someone gives it to you, maybe you have an investment, maybe you really try to save it, because there will be periods that are very dry. I've been pretty dry since COVID. Like New York really did not come back that much since COVID. And I've been focusing on writing, so I haven't been as focused on filming, but I've been doing a little, but it is like you're gonna have flows. Yeah, I have a friend that did undergrad at Columbia and got a writing degree, and his line was like, at the end was like, I wish they told me that I still needed time to write. Like, I can't, that's the main thing. All right, I'm nearing the end. Any questions or comments? This page is called Bonus Thoughts. I do think it's a huge deal. This is slightly soapboxy. But the gender equality and gender parity is so terrible in this industry, and this is the first year that it's gone down a little. So like as a cinematographer, I think it's like the top 250 maybe films these stats are from. We were 3% women, and then we were 4% women, and then I think we were 6, and now we're down to 4. And what I think is important about why I'm taking a second to talk about it is that no one wants to talk about gender parity or gender equity, Like I'm not trying to make men feel bad, but because it gets talked about so much, there's this sense that women are taking all the jobs from my male friends. They're like, oh, I didn't get this, probably they had, I think it's enraging. But probably a woman got it. We went from 3 to 4 to 6 back to, I think it's 5. So like you still get 94%, even if you feel this shift. So like I think, and it's such a, it's such a hard thing because it would be so easily fixed, right? Like if the people that hired were just down to hire outside their main sect, we'd fix it pretty quickly. So my ask to everyone is when you are hiring or recommending someone, that you take a little extra time and have half the people you hire or recommend, or that you're considering, be non-male or non-white or non-straight, or whatever it means to you, your demographic and down. Like, I shouldn't say down, obviously, but like, how can you, if someone asked me today to recommend a sound person, I think the first 3 people I think of are white men, and they're my friends and I like them. But I think a pretty simple thing I can do to help the problem is to send one of those names and to take the time to make an extra phone call to someone else to get a second name that I'm both sending in. And it's hard because I don't want to sugarcoat it. Like, I want to be positive and be like, yay, work in film, everyone. But like, most people, it stands out to me when a man hires me. Like, most people that hire me are women, and women are getting a much smaller percentage of the producer and director jobs. Like, this is a thing we talk about a lot, but it hasn't shifted very much. It's subsequently, if you can be on a set with all women or almost all women, it's amazing. Like, there's just this like warmth. There's this yes and energy, you know? Like, so yeah, I would say in like total wrapping up-ish mode, and then we can say we'll do Q&A for the last 10 minutes if we like. I'll write my email and phone number down if you would like it. The things that have made my career, here are my little highlights I think that were great for my career. I had one friend who was like 20 years older than me that would put my name in a lot as a producer for jobs. That was great. This Raina's text thread, this affinity group, I think that was very helpful because I was like kind of dead center, so sometimes I'd get these higher reaching things. I have a low cost apartment in New York City that has certainly enabled me to do this kind of freelance, sometimes take jobs that would pay less. And then I would say yes. Like, I have written Audacity 16-minute oneer. We did a short film recently and there's a 16-minute oneer. And the woman told me, she talked to one male DP who was like, I think we should do it differently. And then she talked to me, I didn't remember this, but she was like, oh, and I was like, okay, let's do it. And we did it, and it's great. So like, there is the whole fail more, how people say fail more, I think it's really true, and that you should try to take stretches and not always make them. It is a struggle depending on what you're working on, because I'm not gonna fail at a short film that you saved $30,000 or whatever it is to make. But, you know, like, just do stuff that appeals to you and try to do it a bit more outside of the box and have a fun time along the way. Thanks for listening, everybody. That's kind of all I have. Any thoughts or questions? We'll do a little bit of a discussion. Does anyone work freelance in Williamsburg, Virginia? Yeah? Yeah. Any deep thoughts? Anything to share about it?
It's definitely, so I'm moving to Chicago in a couple weeks to go into the film industry, so I just graduated in May, so it's kind of like what I was doing in my free time. And I did it to get used to that lifestyle of long periods of work and then periods without work to see if that's something that agrees with me. And I think if people here are interested in that, it's definitely worth like forming your own company. It's not that hard. And trying it out for yourself and learning if that kind of a lifestyle is good for you. You know, because I think we don't really know that till we're doing it. But it is challenging and it is very different. And it's certainly a skill. So.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things we don't think about when we're 18, like, do you want a mortgage on a house, or do you want to be home for Saturday baseball game, you know, like, and there's so many different fields within fields, but yeah, that's certainly not for everyone.
This one is a little bit out of the box, but I'm curious about it. I find that jobs that are so up in the air about when it's going to be, and they can be, like, even, I worked a serving job, and even, like, working nights when I wasn't used to that, and everyone else I know is working a 9 to 5, I was like, oh, this sucks. I have, like, no social life. So do you find that you struggle with, like, yeah, your whole family's going to their, you know, to your mom's for Christmas, and you have a shoot? Like, do you struggle with that a lot, or have you found ways to get around that, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I definitely struggle with it. A couple different thoughts I had in response to that. One is I forgot to talk about a contract. Have a contract for work before you start work. It sounds obvious, but just do it. I like having them being a little bit longer, and I know sometimes people find that, oh, it's scary, but like I want it to say overtime at 12. I don't want to get to the 12th hour and then suddenly I have to pull the director aside and be like, hey, are you sure you want to pay everyone overtime? Now we're having this conversation under stress. I want it established, before. The number of jobs that have been told are 100% and then went away is high also, So like I try to work and it kills, and then maybe we should probably say something better. A cancellation fee of, if you cancel within this amount of time. But back to freelance overall. Yeah, it's hard. Like for me to get a job, what I need to do is book a vacation. Like just like that. I'm gonna have to book a flight later tonight and it's like clockwork that, someone will offer something. So I guess it's just, kind of knowing when to say no too, right? Like you don't have to work Christmas Eve. They're probably paying a higher rate because they need someone to work Christmas Eve. But yeah, absolutely. Part of it is also finding understanding among your family and friends that, we have date night dinner, but I just got offered a very high paid job I have to do, but am I always gonna cancel? Like, or sometimes, so yeah, it's a lot to think out. I mean, if I didn't stress it, I absolutely love what I do, and it has afforded me so many interesting life experiences. The documentary stuff especially, you get to drop in like really closely in someone's home, and this little list of famous people, like they're not meeting me, like I'm there to film them. So like it really is amazing, and I highly recommend it. And you get to work a lot of places and do a lot of interesting things. I guess that's what I got for the moment. Mm-hmm.
When moving to New York, are there any like parts of the city that you would recommend for like finding like cheaper places of living that isn't just like hell to like transport like equipment and stuff to go to shoots?
Yeah, I'm going to write my email and phone down, and if you want to shoot me an email, just so I'm not taking everyone's time. But yeah, I would think about like what line you're on if you only have to transfer once as opposed to like twice. And yes, there's a bunch of different neighborhoods. Union Square is often like used as a base, but anyway, whatever. If you're getting picked, doesn't matter. But East Williamsburg, I mean, along the L, farther and farther, wherever your rent number starts, that you'd like to start looking at, that would be my main suggestion.
Thank you.
Did you have a lot of luck, like trying to get like experience or like internships, like over the summer, like during college, like to help get like film experience?
I don't know if I tried that. I taught English in China one summer, and I think I waitered. I got an internship at a law firm one summer that was unrelated. So I guess I don't know too much about that. But also a lot of stuff comes up last minute, right? Like if you don't have an internship in New York and you want something to do for the summer, maybe rent a house for 3 months of the summer and just tell everyone you're there and available, because I have no work lined up this summer, but I will, just not yet. And absolutely, I would suggest moving to New York and getting on a set, who cares if it's paid or not, and making a good impression as quickly as possible. And then, hopefully those people call you or you follow up with those people, and who knows what the next thing is. And there's enough like low budget hustle jobs, at least, I don't know, yeah.
Obviously LA and New York are like the main hubs.
Mm-hmm.
I guess in your experience, how viable are any other locations?
Well, I haven't lived there, so I'm not the right person to answer. So I really don't know. I worked in Chicago recently, and were you answering the question, or are you asking a different question?
Answering the
Oh yeah,
question.
go for it.
I went to school in Savannah, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
So Atlanta is the big hub in the South. It's just the only reason I'm not there right now is because I couldn't handle the heat anymore. So that's another big metropolitan city. It's the biggest one in the South, pretty much for arts and culture and movies. Now they're investing more and more down there, and it's going to be cheaper to live. And if you're, because you can be right outside of the city, and it's still probably cheaper to live in than New York or LA.
I hear about Austin. I hear about,
I know there's like some stuff in Canada too.
oh yeah, totally. And then a lot of these places, like I'm not a producer, so I don't have to follow this, but a lot of these places have tax credits, right? Where they're, you know, the movies are incentivized to come. I'm just going to pass around my name and phone number. If you'll just, if you need to follow up with a question, please feel free. So yeah, so I think it depends.
Okay, well then I guess it's just more, a little harder than a lot of.
Well, I guess the question is like, when you said, is it viable? I guess what are you looking for, right? Like, you know, are you looking to work in an indie narrative film? Are you looking to film interviews with CEOs at a higher rate? Like, I guess I would try to find some
Okay,
friend.
I live closer to DC, so thinking about opportunities there.
There's I think there's a William and Mary meetup thing that happens every now and again that Ted Hodgman, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, who is a sound mixer, who's giving a talk, I think tomorrow, or at least he's getting to town tomorrow, every now and then runs an alumni, I don't know if, you probably don't have to be alumni, but like a filmmaker meetup. It's Hogman is his last name.
Can you say that one more time?
Ted, and then Hogman, I think, is his last name. Yes.
Okay.
I guess I'm saying find him on Facebook or ask him somehow to tell you about that if you end up there. I found DC, I mean, I did one short film outside of DC and we couldn't find a first AC for $650. And I thought that was a pretty good rate for New York for a short. So rates are much higher, I think. But I also worked on a documentary here, and the camera guys sitting outside filming the courthouse, camera people, were making like $300 a day or something I thought was very low. So I don't know. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, what are some of the biggest misconceptions about the work you do? Like prior to joining the industry, what was like one big thing you wish you had known?
Prior to joining the industry, what was one big thing I wish I'd known?
Yeah.
And what are some of the misconceptions about the work I do? I don't know what misconceptions are. Everyone's first question, if they're not at all related, is always like, "Oh, have you worked on anything I've heard of?" You know, like, well, how good's your taste? But that's not really a misconception. Yeah, I don't know. What do I wish I'd known? I don't know. I think it's worked out really good, and I'm glad I'm doing it. But I do feel like I gave a talk here once that was like what I would tell my little sister if she was considering joining the film industry at age 18. Like I didn't think about a lot of this more practical stuff. Like, oh, I'm not going to have kids, and I feel okay not without a down payment on a home. But like if that wasn't, I didn't think I'm glad I'm okay with that, or you know, I hadn't thought about it so much. Yeah.
I have a question for you, for the young kids here. What do you do for your own 401k or planning your own retirement since you work as a freelancer?
I'm 43, and for the last 2 to 3 years, I've been contributing to my 401k because I remembered to do that. So that's that plan. That's all I got. It's up to $7,500 a year. And then I recently put some money in the stock market, but that's complicated. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is also a thing, like I'm 43 and I still feel totally fine doing this work, but I'm not gonna do all day handheld forever, you know? Like, so that's a thing to think about. Oh, maybe I am. They make different gimbals and da-da-da-da-da. Biggest misconception is someone being like, a girl cinematographer, you can carry that? Which is funny because it is fucking heavy, excuse my language. Like it does suck to carry, but now I have to pretend that it's fine, you know? I think a misconception early on was when people offered to carry things for me that I could say yes, instead of being like, no, I got it, I can do it. And then at some point it just clicked and I was like, absolutely, the bigger people can carry the stuff. Like, what am I doing? What else? What other thoughts?
You mentioned earlier that you pivoted to writing after COVID. I'm wondering, like, what other like interdisciplinary
Totally. Okay, question about writing and other interdisciplinary film art stuff. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do think I'm a very ADD person, which is part of what makes me good at this job and also part of what makes me like it so much. Writing, I had done a lot of articles for papers. Now I'm doing nonfiction creative writing, so like essays and funny stories. That's not that related. But it's a fun outlet, right? Like I do think of film as like, if you're making a film because you want a creative outlet, if you could paint a picture instead, then you can go home and do that tonight. You don't need all this money and all these people and all these things. It's a really hard creative outlet, you know? So I think it's nice to have things that you can actually do. I'm attached to like 3 different features that are all just looking for a little bit more money, as they have been for the last 4 or 5 years, you know? Like it's very hard to get projects off the ground. But yeah, I do like weird participatory art. My friends have like a little art collective, and we're like, oh, you have to write a story and make a sandcastle, and then we dance around. So I do like weird, fun stuff. Yeah. Yes?
So what has been your favorite project you've ever worked on?
Well, as a cop-out, I'm going to, not cop-out, but just as the first thing that comes to mind, I'm going to say the work I did at Standing Rock. I was so out of my depth, right? Like, I'm like, okay, a documentary cinematographer, I'm just going to show up and try to make news media and pitch it to news media outlets, and that'll work. So, like, that was weird. I had an RV, we were living on the frozen ground. That was weird. I'm a relatively white person in a 700 different indigenous tribe and white people scenario where there's no clear leaders and no, like, a lot of different opinions on just all of it. And there's militarized police. And, like, there was just a lot going on. It felt very lifeful. Like, every day was, like, kind of a challenge and, like, a decision. And it felt like we were doing important work because it felt like there was less violence when there were more reporters,